My name's David Berger. I'm an assistant city attorney for the City of Los Angeles.
So can you tell me the current state of affairs in terms of, because the anti-pot laws, the government said that they're going to give more control to local officials. How has that affected you guys?
Well, it's actually been very supportive of our position. The City of Los Angeles, for the longest time, has supported a view that people who are legitimately in need of medical marijuana should be able to get it safely and in a manner that doesn't adversely impact the community. Now, what we've seen in the last couple of years, while the city has struggled to find the right formula, is an explosion in pot shops. Yes, they're calling themselves medical marijuana dispensaries. They're showing the red cross, but you know what? Everybody knows what's going on. It is just a front. It's a pretext. They are selling marijuana for recreational use, and it's having a very bad impact on the community, and the public want us to take action. So that's why we've come up with a law that basically regulates how medical marijuana is to be distributed to the people who really need it.
So what is this law? Can you tell people?
I'll give you a few of the features. The first is that it is a collective only. The only way to distribute medical marijuana to patients is through a collective. And your next question is, well, what's a collective? We believe what it means is a group of people who come together for a common purpose to cultivate marijuana for their own use, for medicinal purposes. It's not a profit enterprise. It is simply a way of getting around the federal law and the state law that otherwise prohibits growing and giving away marijuana. It does not authorize the sale of marijuana.
So Chichanich says, in 215, the whole collected with profit versus non-profit. Thing is, many people are saying that in 215 it does not state about anything about non-profit or profit.
Very good point. The whole problem with 215, which is the Compassionate Use Act, is that it lacks many of the features we usually see in a properly drafted law. This law is not well made, the Compassionate Use Act. One thing is clear, it's the Compassionate Use Act, it's not the Commercial Use Act. So we know there's no commerce involved in it, it's for compassionate use. What we do, what happens in our legal system, and indeed many other legal systems, when you're faced with a law that is vague and unclear, it's left to the courts to decide, if you like to fill in the gaps, to decide by cases that are tried, what are the limits of this law. And we've had decisions in the past couple of years coming down from our Supreme Court that's given us some guidance. And that's what makes it very clear to us that, number one, it's not a commercial use act, it's compassionate, you can't sell it, that it is intended only for legitimate patients who have an identifiable need. It is not a precursor to legalization of pot. It's not the wild, wild west of weed in Los Angeles, even though it looks that way, and that means close to 1,000 stores that are out there selling recreational use marijuana are going to be closing down over the next year.
So are you expecting to close? I mean, how are you going to control that? How do you go about choosing what's a legitimate dispensary and what's not?
Well, first of all, they are going to have to comply with the ordinance that is before City Council. One of the requirements in there is that they cannot be located within 1,000 feet of any school, rehab center, a place of worship, places like that. Now, many of the collectives are so located. Apparently, as many as 200 fall within that group. They also can't be within 1,000 feet of each other. And again, if you go up and down some of the high streets in LA, you'll see there's pot shop after pot shop. So they're going to fall by the wayside. Also, because they can't sell marijuana the way they're doing at the moment, sheer economics is going to force them out of business.
Well, speaking of economics, a lot of people say this brings in a lot of business, and a lot of people could be losing their jobs. Is that an issue that you...
Well, how about, the gangs? They keep a lot of people busy, don't they? I mean, should we just say any activity that occupies people is lawful? This is one of the arguments that's being put forward by the proponents of recreational use marijuana is marijuana is just like alcohol, it's just like tobacco. Why don't you legalize it, tax it, regulate it, everyone's going to be just fine. The problem is, everyone knows that both alcohol and tobacco, yes, they do bring in tax revenue, but that revenue pales into insignificance compared to the social and healthcare costs of abuse of alcohol and death by cancer from smoking. So there's a much higher cost associated with these products than the tax revenue that they bring in, and that's no justification for saying, let's just do it. The federal government has made it very clear they are not legalizing marijuana. All they're saying is, if you genuinely need it, and you are getting it lawfully by a collective, we're not going to stop you. They're not saying legalization. That's a very clear message we're getting from the Obama administration, from let me just find my note here. It's the Office of National Drug Control Policy, and they're making it very clear. It is not legalization. They're also making it clear that you don't decide medical issues by popular votes. You decide it by science. Okay, if you're gonna.
How do you control science? I mean, because if someone says they have, anxiety or this or that, like, how do you control, I guess, prescribing marijuana to people in terms of, people that legitimately need it or don't?
Well, let's go back to the law. And what did the Compassionate Use Act say? And it really did narrow down. I mean, this was sold to us, to the people, to the voters of California, as something for the seriously ill. We have seen time after time when the issue comes before council, the typical proponent who's coming in is someone with a serious disease. It's not somebody who comes in complaining about a little neck pain or sore feet. And you can also you can argue this all day long as to whether it's a medical benefit or not. I say you put the onus on the collective to decide if they want to share their marijuana with people who have a medical, it's not a prescription, by the way, it's a recommendation. If they want to share their marijuana with people with those sorts of issues, that's okay, because they're operating within the collective. But they're not going to the pot shops to buy dope to get high. The law doesn't allow that. The City of LA doesn't allow that.
In terms of public support, it's obvious that, in LA this is a popular thing. A lot of people support it. In terms of now putting out a new policy and a law against it and maybe shutting down these dispensaries, are you worried that you might lose a lot of public support?
Our job is to enforce the law, not to win popularity contests.
Yes.
And the law of the state of California and the law of the City of LA is compassionate use only. If you want commercial use, you want recreational use, you're going to have to lobby for a change in the law. Our duty is to uphold the law, and the law, as we see it, we're not making the policy, we're just operating within the guidelines that the Obama administration has given.
So, finally, in an ideal world, what does the city hope to see in terms of
We'd like to see well-run, well-regulated collectives giving marijuana to people who need it, operating discreetly without, neon-lit storefronts and glossy magazines, and really just being responsible. What we're seeing at the moment is irresponsible commercialism, and it's got to stop.
Do you find there's a difference between Northern and Southern California?
In terms of the attitude towards marijuana, we've been pretty mellow in Los Angeles about marijuana use. I mean, it is widely used recreationally, whether it's lawful or otherwise. And while it was under the radar, it seemed nobody was too bothered about it. This explosion, these 1,000 pot shops that have opened up, have really angered members of the public who aren't quite so mellow about it. And they're demanding that we actually do something about it and regulate it. I know other states have, other cities have different approaches, like Oakland, for example. Oakland allows the sale of marijuana, but it only has 4 places where you can buy it. So that's an alternative way of dealing with it. The problem for the city of Los Angeles is sales of marijuana are against the law of our state and against the law of federally. So we cannot, as lawyers, suggest this to the city, because that's not a lawful means of achieving the goal of the Compassionate Use Act. We have to operate by what the law tells us at the moment.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much.